What drives someone to face evil in its purest form? For Father Gabriele Amorth, the Vatican's chief exorcist for over 3 decades, confronting the malignant was a spiritual calling, a life mission. For years, he challenged invisible forces that shape human destiny, gathering stories that defy logic and reveal the secrets of a battle fought on the spiritual plane. But how can one man interrogate the devil, extract truths from him, and at the same time resist his deceptions? Where is the boundary between faith and the unknown? An exorcist's first confrontation with the devil is always a watershed moment. For Father Gabriele Amorth, this moment occurred during an exorcism he would never forget. On that day, the atmosphere in the room changed drastically. The air grew cold, as if an icy current had swept through the space. It was something he had heard other experienced exorcists describe, but living through it himself was an overwhelming experience. The sensation of being watched, almost as if evil were probing his every thought, was palpable. During the ritual, he realized he was not merely facing an invisible resistance, but something that responded, moved, and reacted. This disturbing presence seemed to observe and study his actions, searching for a weakness. At that moment, Gabriele understood that the spiritual battle was not just about words or rituals. It was about maintaining the steadfastness of both faith and mind. Can you imagine what it feels like to stand face to face with something that defies all rational explanations? As he recited the prayers of the rite of exorcism, he felt his own inner strength being tested. It was not enough to simply repeat the words. He had to believe in them with unwavering conviction. When the devil resists, it does so not only with invisible force, but by attempting to confuse, undermine faith, and sow doubt. How does one resist that? Father Amorth described prayer as his most powerful weapon. He began with the words, "Depart, rebel. Depart, seducer, full of traps and lies, enemy of virtue, persecutor of the innocent." These phrases, more than a recitation, carried spiritual authority. It was as if Christ himself were present in that moment, speaking through the exorcist. Throughout the exorcism, the environment seemed to react to every word. The cold intensified, and objects in the room seemed to grow heavier, as though the space was filled with an oppressive energy. The resistance was palpable, but at the same time, every step in the rite weakened the malevolent presence. Here, he realized that the struggle was not just physical but deeply psychological and spiritual. Why does the devil react so violently to the words of an exorcist? This question intrigued him. Over time, he came to understand that the words of the rite were not a magical formula but an expression of unshakable faith in the power of God. That made all the difference. He also noticed that the battle was both internal and external. The devil not only resisted expulsion but also tried to plant seeds of doubt in the exorcist's heart. During that first encounter, he felt as though an inner voice whispered, "You won't succeed. This is futile." It was proof that even in such a sacred ritual, the exorcist's faith was constantly tested. At one point, the tension in the room reached its peak. Gabriele felt an almost tangible force pushing him to abandon the ritual. But he persisted. He knew that giving in would mean allowing the evil to grow stronger. Like a soldier in battle, he held his ground, reciting the prayers to the very end. When the exorcism concluded, the room returned to normal. The air felt lighter, and the silence was comforting. The demon had been expelled, though not without leaving its mark. For Gabriele, that experience was a call to deepen his mission and to better understand the forces he was fighting against. That first encounter taught him a fundamental lesson. The power of evil is real but not absolute. He realized that victory over the demonic lies not only in the words of the exorcism, but in the faith and courage of the one who speaks them. After all, what protects us in moments of great darkness if not the strength of our belief? Even in victory, he knew that this was only the beginning. Evil, in its essence, is persistent. It always finds new ways to attack and resist. But for Father Amorth, that first triumph was a reminder that no matter how terrifying the enemy may be, it will always be defeated by divine light. How can an ordinary man stand firm in such an intense spiritual battle? This was the question that would continue to echo in his mind as he prepared for the many challenges yet to come. Engaging in dialogue with the devil might seem absurd to many. After all, how can one trust a being that is, by nature, a liar? This question did not go unnoticed by Father Gabriel Amorth in his journey as an exorcist. However, he discovered something surprising. At certain moments, the Lord compels the devil to speak the truth. But why does this happen? During exorcisms, the priest recounted moments when the evil one was forced to reveal crucial information. These instances occurred as a sign of Satan's defeat before the power of God. It is curious to imagine that, despite being so cunning and prideful, the devil cannot resist divine authority. This act of submission reveals something profound. Evil, no matter how fierce it may seem, is not self-sufficient. It is limited by the supreme power of the Creator. For instance, learning the name of a demon during an exorcism is extremely significant. For the exorcist, it represents a breaking point. A name carries the essence of the being, and pronouncing it weakens its resistance. For a demon, being identified is an indescribable humiliation. But why is this revelation so important? According to Father Amorth, a name is not just a label, it is a spiritual key. By obtaining this information, the exorcist can direct their prayers with greater precision, targeting the malevolent presence directly. This transforms the battle into something more focused and effective. However, extracting this truth from the demon is no easy task. It resists with all its strength, using lies, distractions, and sometimes even physical and verbal aggression. On one occasion, Father Amorth asked the demon why, despite its superior intelligence, it chose to rebel against God. The response was filled with palpable pride. "I rebelled against God and showed that I am stronger than Him." These words, though shocking, reveal the core of the demonic essence, the desire for absolute autonomy, even at the cost of self-destruction. But how does one deal with an entity that distorts everything to its advantage? The priest explained that the key lies in obedience to the rite. The liturgy of the exorcism is clear, and the exorcist must never improvise or be led by curiosity. The devil is a master of manipulation, and a poorly phrased question can open the door to traps. Thus, the exorcist must stick strictly to what is necessary for the ritual, avoiding unnecessary dialogues. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to hear a malevolent entity utter truths that challenge all human logic? It is an experience that is both terrifying and revealing. During these dialogues, Father Amorth saw not just a battle between himself and the devil, but a testament to the power of God. Every word of evil that was forced to be spoken was, in truth, a confirmation of divine victory. In some cases, the demon admitted that it did not want to speak but was compelled to. It would say things like, "I am forced to say this, and I hate every word." Such declarations reinforced the idea that the exorcist was not fighting alone. God's power acted directly, forcing the evil one to expose its weakness. The demon, though cunning, revealed its limitations. It knew that any revelation was a step toward its defeat. For this reason, its resistance was fierce. Often, the environment seemed to turn into a battlefield, with intense physical manifestations. Doors slammed, objects fell, and the exorcist felt an invisible pressure trying to distract him. But Gabriel Amorth held his ground. He knew that each word extracted from the demon was a small victory, a piece of the puzzle that helped free the tormented soul. The fight was not just against evil, it was for truth and salvation. These moments led him to reflect on the essence of spiritual battle. If even the devil is forced to acknowledge the truth, what does that mean for us? Do we underestimate the power of faith in our own lives? For Father Amorth, these revelations served as constant reminders that evil, despite being terrifying, is never invincible. Truth, even when spoken by one made of lies, always prevails. Few things infuriate the devil more than the figure of the Virgin Mary. In the accounts of Father Gabriel Amorth, this aversion is not merely symbolic but a spiritual reality that manifests clearly during exorcisms. When invoked, Mary elicits intense reactions from the evil one, revealing the immense power of her humility and purity. The priest recounted a dialogue in which he questioned the devil about the virtues of Mary that angered him the most. Satan replied, in a tone of deep hatred, "She infuriates me because she is the humblest of all creatures, and I am the proudest. Because she is the purest, and I am not. Because she is the most obedient to God, and I am the rebel." This declaration, coming directly from the entity that embodies evil, is powerful evidence of how humility and obedience possess a power that transcends the physical realm. But why does Mary provoke such wrath in the evil one? To understand this, one must delve into the essence of evil. Pride is the root of Satan's fall, the flame that fuels his eternal rebellion. Mary, on the other hand, represents the opposite. Her absolute humility leaves no room for vanity or self-preservation. In the devil's view, she is the perfect antithesis of everything he values. In a particularly revealing moment, Father Amorth asked why Mary's name was feared more than that of Jesus. The response was as unexpected as it was profound. Because it humiliates me more to be defeated by a mere creature than by him. This confession exposes the psychological and spiritual dimensions of the conflict. Jesus, being God, is inherently superior, but being defeated by Mary, a simple human, is an affront that the devil finds even more unbearable. During exorcisms, the invocation of Mary often marked a turning point. The priest reported that at the mention of her name or the recitation of prayers dedicated to her, the reactions of the evil one were violent and immediate. The demon seemed to lose control, and its resistance visibly weakened. Why does this happen? Mary is not just a figure of devotion. She is a symbol of victory for humanity. Through her obedience and purity, she demonstrates that even the simplest human can achieve a profound connection with the divine. This message is devastating to evil because it challenges its narrative of superiority and power. Father Amorth also observed that devotion to Mary is a powerful weapon against the attacks of the evil one in everyday life. He frequently recommended the recitation of the Rosary, not just as a devotional practice but as spiritual protection. For him, every Hail Mary was like a sword wielded against evil. Have you ever stopped to think about what makes humility so powerful? In a world where pride is often glorified, Mary's example is a reminder that true strength lies in surrender and obedience to God. For the devil, this idea is unbearable. On another occasion, the priest asked the evil one if there was any particular quality of Mary that he found most intolerable. Satan replied, "She always frustrates me because she was never touched by any stain of sin." This declaration underscores Mary's unique role in the story of salvation. Her purity is like a light that exposes the darkness of evil, making it impossible for the devil to resist her presence. Father Amorth's exorcisms demonstrated that the spiritual battle is not only a struggle of forces but also of symbols and meanings. Mary, with her simplicity and devotion, is a constant reminder that evil can be defeated not by brute force but by unwavering faith. In the end, the priest believed that Mary was a model for all Christians. Her victory over the evil one was not just personal but collective. Every prayer directed to her, every invocation, was a reaffirmation of her triumph and, by extension, the triumph of all who follow the path of faith. If even the evil one is forced to recognize Mary's strength, what does this teach us about the power of humility and purity? Perhaps the true spiritual battle begins in our own hearts, with the choice to follow her example. To understand the words and actions of the devil during the exorcisms conducted by Father Gabriel Amorth, it is essential to delve into the root of evil, Lucifer's rebellion against God. The devil himself, in the midst of his forced dialogues, lets slip his justification. "I rebelled against God and showed that I am stronger than him." But what does this truly mean? Lucifer's rebellion was not merely an act of disobedience. It was a declaration of absolute autonomy, the desire to be like God without being under his authority. Before the fall, Lucifer was considered the most beautiful and powerful of angels. However, consumed by pride, his vision became distorted. He came to believe that true freedom could only be achieved by turning away from God. This same pride defines the behavior of the evil one during exorcisms. Every act of resistance, every lie, every attempt to confuse the exorcist reflects this rebellious nature. The devil does not simply aim to avoid defeat. He seeks, incessantly, to prove that his choice to turn away from God was one of strength, not weakness. Have you ever wondered why pride is considered the greatest of the deadly sins? In Lucifer's case, pride transformed his admiration for God into envy and resentment. He craved not only God's position but also the adoration that belonged to him. This desire, over millennia, has spilled into the devil's relationship with humanity. In Father Amorth's accounts, demonic pride often manifested in words of defiance. On one occasion, the devil mocked, "I bow to no one. I rule. I am sovereign." Yet this proud posture is a facade for his true condition, a fallen being enslaved by his own rebellion. Exorcism, in this context, is not merely a ritual of liberation but a direct confrontation with this mentality. Father Amorth believed that the essence of the devil lay in the denial of all that is divine. However, this denial does not make him stronger. On the contrary, it exposes his weakness. By renouncing God, Lucifer and his followers disconnected themselves from the source of all power and truth. Interestingly, Lucifer's rebellion is also reflected in the desires he seeks to instill in humanity. Sin, in a way, is an extension of this original pride, a constant attempt to distance humanity from God. To the devil, every soul that succumbs to sin is a small victory in his personal war against the Creator. But how do we confront him? This was a question Father Amorth often pondered. He believed the true weapon against the devil was humility. While pride seeks to exalt, humility disarms. For the exorcist, following the example of Mary, the humblest of all creatures, was key to resisting the temptations of the evil one. Demonic pride, then, is not just a characteristic but the foundation of the devil's entire existence. During the rituals, this trait manifests in various ways: resistance to the name of God, disdain for the figure of Mary, and, above all, the refusal to admit defeat. Yet every word extracted from the devil is a reminder that, despite his resistance, he will always be subject to divine authority. How can we, as human beings, protect ourselves from this same pride that led to the fall of the angels? This question stands as a reminder that the spiritual battle is not only in the invisible but also in our daily choices. One of the most fascinating lessons from Father Amorth's work was understanding how truth can emerge from the devil's lies. Over his 36 years as an exorcist, he learned to filter the words of the evil one, identifying patterns and hidden truths even in the most deceptive responses. During an exorcism, the devil rarely speaks plainly. He uses subterfuge, sarcasm, and half-truths to divert the exorcist's focus. Why does he do this? Because every word he is forced to reveal against his will is a small defeat. Even in lying, the devil reveals something about his own nature and limitations. Father Amorth recounted that in many cases, the devil was compelled to admit his own powerlessness before God. On one occasion, when confronted with the question of why he could not resist the prayers of the right, he replied angrily, "Because he forces me to obey. I don't want to, but I have no choice." Such a statement, though filled with disdain, demonstrates the complete submission of evil to divine will. But how does one filter truth amidst so much distortion? Father Amorth explained that the key lay in experience and observation. He learned to recognize behavioral patterns, tone of voice, and even the effect of words on the surrounding environment. Every detail was carefully analyzed to discern what was relevant to freeing the possessed person. Have you ever considered how evil can reveal its own defeat even as it tries to resist? This irony was one of the most intriguing realities of Father Amorth's work. The devil, no matter how cunning, could not entirely escape the truth. A clear example of this was the moment when the devil's name was revealed. This act, which might seem simple, is one of the greatest humiliations for the evil one. He knows that in revealing his name, he loses part of his hold over the possessed person. This forcibly extracted truth serves as a constant reminder that he lacks absolute control. Father Amorth also observed that, often, the devil's lies were more revealing than they appeared. His exaggerations, tone of voice, and choice of words, all of these provided clues about his true intentions. It was as if, in trying to deceive, he inadvertently exposed even more of his fragility. These lessons lead us to an important reflection. How can we recognize the lies of evil in our own lives? Are we, at times, deceived by thoughts or situations that seem true but conceal hidden traps? For Father Amorth, the answer lay in closeness to God. The stronger a person is spiritually, the easier it becomes to identify the distortions of the evil one. The truth, even when obscured, always finds a way to emerge. Among the many accounts of exorcisms performed by Father Gabriel Amorth, one of the most impactful was that of a young woman named Clara, a fictitious name to protect her identity. This case became a landmark in the exorcist's life, symbolizing how evil can manifest devastatingly but also how faith can bring liberation and hope. Clara was a 23-year-old woman who began exhibiting inexplicable behaviors. She would shift from uncontrollable joy to overwhelming sadness in mere minutes. Her body often trembled for no apparent reason, and at times, she would speak phrases in languages she had never learned. Doctors found no explanation for what was happening, and her desperate family turned to the church for help. When Clara arrived before Father Amorth, he described the scene as an invisible presence of darkness. The young woman avoided meeting the exorcist's gaze, refused to join in prayer, and, as he began reciting the rite of exorcism, her behavior changed dramatically. She screamed in a voice that was not her own, deep and full of disdain, "She does not belong to me. You will never take her from me." The atmosphere in the room changed drastically. The air grew heavy, and Father Amorth felt an almost physical pressure trying to stop him from continuing. Yet he knew that this was the moment to persist. Holding the crucifix in his hands, he began invoking the name of Jesus Christ, praying for the young woman's deliverance. Throughout the exorcism, Clara alternated between long periods of silence and violent outbursts of rage. In one particularly terrifying moment, she abruptly stood up with seemingly superhuman strength and shouted, "I own her. You have no power here." Even at the height of the demon's resistance, Father Amorth maintained his focus, reciting the prayers and calling for the intercession of Mary. Then came the most dramatic moment. The priest demanded, in God's name, that the demon reveal its name. For long minutes, there was silence. Clara appeared paralyzed, her eyes fixed on something invisible. Finally, in a voice fractured with hatred, the demon replied, "My name is Legion." The entire room seemed to tremble at those words. The revelation of the name brought the full weight of the spiritual battle to light. Yet, for Father Amorth, it was also a sign that victory was near. The name was the key to weakening the demon's influence, and he intensified his prayers, now targeting the expulsion of Legion. The struggle lasted hours, each moment a test of faith and endurance. Clara continued screaming, her body reacting violently to the prayers, but something began to shift. Gradually, her movements became less aggressive, and her voice grew weaker. Finally, after one last invocation to the Virgin Mary, the young woman fell into a deep silence. Father Amorth described that moment as one of indescribable relief. Clara opened her eyes, confused but visibly free from the torment that had consumed her for months. She cried and embraced her mother while the exorcist offered a prayer of gratitude to God for her liberation. This case was not only a spiritual victory but also a profound lesson for all involved. It demonstrated that no matter how terrifying evil may seem, it is never invincible. Faith, coupled with courage, is the greatest weapon against the forces of darkness. What impressed Father Amorth the most was how Clara, after her liberation, dedicated herself to her faith. She began attending church regularly and became an example of devotion and gratitude. For him, this was the true purpose of his work, not just to expel evil but to restore people to the light of God. Have you ever imagined witnessing something so profound and transformative? For Father Amorth, this was the essence of his mission, to remind the world that even in the greatest darkness, light always prevails. In his mission to free souls from the grip of the evil one, Father Gabriel Amorth often emphasized the importance of the saints' intercession. These men and women, who lived lives of profound connection with God, are considered powerful spiritual allies in the fight against the devil. Among the saints most frequently invoked during his rituals were Saint Michael the Archangel and Saint Benedict, figures renowned for their direct confrontations with evil. But what makes these saints so effective in exorcisms? Saint Michael the Archangel, described in the Bible as the leader of the heavenly hosts, is invoked as the defender of divine justice. Father Amorth frequently recited the traditional prayer to Saint Michael, which calls for his intercession in the battle against the forces of darkness. He recounted that invoking the archangel's name often elicited reactions of anger and resistance from the demon, as if faced with an unbearable presence. Saint Michael symbolizes God's victory over demonic rebellion, and his spiritual sword is a constant reminder that evil will never triumph. Another prominent saint in exorcism rituals was Saint Benedict. Known for his extreme devotion and resistance to the devil's temptations, Saint Benedict left a legacy of prayers and symbols still used today for protection. Father Amorth often employed the Saint Benedict medal, inscribed with a Latin phrase, "Crux sacra sit mihi lux, non draco sit mihi dux. May the Holy Cross be my light, let not the dragon be my guide." He described how merely showing this medal to a possessed individual would provoke immediate reactions, ranging from screams to violent outbursts. Why does the devil react so intensely to these saints? According to Amorth, the answer lies in their sanctity. The saints lived in complete communion with God, overcoming temptations and proving that humanity can resist sin. To the devil, they represent the defeat of his power over humankind. During rituals, the mere mention of any saint's name was a source of humiliation for the evil one, though certain names seem to carry special weight, such as Saint Anthony of Padua and Saint Therese of Lisieux. Beyond their spiritual strength, the saints also served as examples for the faithful seeking protection against evil. Father Amorth believed that studying the lives of the saints could help Christians strengthen their own faith and resist the devil's attacks. He often encouraged people to adopt simple practices such as reading saints' biographies, reciting their prayers, and consecrating religious objects in their names. Have you ever considered how holiness, even after death, continues to influence the spiritual realm? This was one of Father Amorth's greatest sources of inspiration. He saw the saints as bridges between the divine and the human, intercessors ensuring that God's power remained accessible to those who called upon him. However, the exorcist also warned that devotion to the saints must always be rooted in prayer and faith in God. It is not about superstition, but about recognizing that holiness reflects God's presence. Thus, saints are not worshipped but venerated as living examples of God's grace. The role of saints in exorcisms also invites reflection on the importance of the spiritual community. Father Amorth believed that just as saints intercede for us, we must also intercede for one another through prayer. He emphasized that spiritual unity, represented in the communion of saints, is a powerful weapon against the forces of evil. In the end, the exorcist taught that saints are not distant figures but spiritual companions present on our journey. They remind us that victory over evil is possible for anyone living in communion with God. After all, if they faced their own battles and triumphed, why can't we do the same? Little is said about the challenges faced by those who dedicate their lives to battling evil. Father Gabriel Amorth, who conducted thousands of exorcisms over 36 years, witnessed firsthand the toll this vocation took on his physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. More than a battle against the devil, each ritual was also an internal struggle to keep his faith and integrity intact. One of the greatest challenges was physical endurance. Exorcisms, especially in severe cases of possession, could last hours or even days. Father Amorth described how, after intense sessions, he would feel utterly exhausted, as though he had fought a physical battle. He also mentioned spiritual attacks that followed the rituals, such as persistent nightmares, sensations of oppression, or sudden, unexplained illnesses. He believed these attacks were attempts by the devil to intimidate him and drive him away from his mission. How does one defend against such a cunning adversary? Father Amorth believed the key was maintaining a life of constant prayer. He followed a strict routine that included daily mass, frequent confession, and recitation of the rosary. To him, these practices were more than religious obligations. They were a spiritual shield against the forces of evil. The emotional toll was significant as well. The priest frequently dealt with people in extreme circumstances, often victims of deep trauma or psychological struggles. Separating the spiritual from the emotional was one of the most delicate aspects of his work, and he recognized the importance of maintaining empathy without being consumed by the stories he encountered. He would say that an exorcist is not just a spiritual warrior, but also a shepherd of souls. What about direct risks? During rituals, Father Amorth often faced physical aggression. Objects were thrown at him, and the possessed person, under demonic influence, would frequently attempt to attack him. There were instances where the environment itself seemed to turn against him. Crucifixes would fall, doors would slam, and his senses were tested by unbearable odors or disturbing sounds. Despite this, Father Amorth believed the greatest risk for an exorcist was pride. He warned that, in confronting evil, an exorcist might be tempted by the sense of power or the desire for recognition. For him, the exorcist must remain a humble servant, always remembering that the power comes from God, not from themselves. Have you ever considered the weight of carrying this responsibility daily? For Father Amorth, the mission was not just a job, it was a divine calling. He accepted the risks and challenges as part of his vocation, trusting that God would sustain him in every battle. Ultimately, the resilience of an exorcist lies not only in physical or mental strength, but in the ability to remain faithful to their mission, even in the face of danger. Father Amorth taught that confronting evil requires not just courage, but also a constant connection to the source of all goodness, God. The stories and experiences of Father Gabriel Amorth provide a glimpse into an invisible but deeply real battle occurring in the spiritual realm. His encounters with evil reveal both the cunning of the devil and the irresistible power of faith and divine light. With each exorcism, he demonstrated that, no matter how fierce evil may seem, it will always be overcome by humility, purity, and the strength of God's name. Father Amorth's work was not merely about defeating evil, but about liberating souls and reigniting hope. He reminds us that, even in the darkest moments, there is a way back to the light. It is up to us to strengthen our spirituality and cultivate virtues that protect us from the world's temptations and traps. If you are interested in exploring more about spirituality, I have carefully selected a few videos filled with profound knowledge and fascinating discoveries that you will love. Just click on one of them. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-discovery and spiritual growth. Your commitment to knowledge is the first step toward transforming your reality.